what would you like to say to teachers today?
Well, I mean, I don't mean to make it sound like I'm in a pedestal preaching to other people. I can just share my point of view. It's similar because you have teachers who, for example, I never teach thinking, how can I get my student to win a competition? I never teach that way. I try to teach the same way I described just a moment ago, the way students should approach the journey. I try to share with them everything that I feel about the music or that I discovered or that we can discover together. But it's always about the music and about the student becoming the best version of themselves. Then the competition is a consequence of that. But there are students and teachers who they start out by saying, okay, what piece can I pick? And then how can I get this student to play that piece in a way that impresses so that that student can win competitions? I was just told now recently that there is a very, very, very young kid who got into a very, very, very prestigious school at the age of 7. And it's just, I think that this poor kid is being paraded around. And I wish her well, but I think she's going to burn out before she's 13 or 12. But there is a lot of that. So soon you will have a 3-year-old playing Islame or Petrushka. I mean, for what? It's ridiculous.
Yes, absolutely. And it is important that teachers be kind to their students.
It's not about being kind. I mean, you have to be kind to everybody. You cannot be mean gratuitously. You cannot be mean, period. But if you are intense because you are passionate and you are demanding, that may not be perceived as kind. But it's not unkind. You cannot be aggressive or behave with a student in a way that is abusive. No, that's absolutely not. But being demanding and not letting the student get away with things they should not do, like not work, not care. I mean, calling them on that is only fair. It's just that you have to find a way to do it when it's appropriate, that it's not abusive. But I don't know what you mean by being kind.
I would like to add something to what you just said. I think teachers shouldn't be sloppy, should be demanding, but never putting students down. And I will have got better results by being understanding and nice. But putting your student down is in order to make yourself looking better is that a bit pitiful, you know?
Oh yeah, no, I agree completely with that. Of course. Yeah.
And at the same time, the more talent I see in the students, the more demanding I tend to be. Because I know they can do better. I mean, the point is to try to have to bring out the best in them, especially when you truly love music and communicate it to that.
Absolutely. 100% agree.
So, since you are also a parent of a music student, I know Eleanor is already a wonderful cellist. But I would love to know, what would you say is the most important things for parents of music students to understand?
Well, I mean, if you are a musician, you understand that it's a pretty difficult profession, if you want to call it that, or journey. And to be honest with you, I always tried, and my wife and I always tried to be as supportive as we could, but also not to put undue pressure. Because, I mean, sure, if you see that your child is undergoing a period where they don't practice much, or they think that since they have maybe talent, they can float without really pushing themselves, then you have to find a way to push the right buttons to get them to understand that in order to succeed, you have to always be practicing hard. You always have to think that you have way more to learn than what you already know. And that is quite normal. Sometimes kids tend to forget that. But on the other hand, we have never told Eleanor, oh, you must practice 10 hours a day and you must do this competition and win this competition and you must be the best in your class, because that is pointless. This puts too much pressure and then she wouldn't be enjoying it. And I think that everybody also has a different path and a different way to go on that path. Excuse me for a second.
Okay.
I just need a lozenge for my throat. As I said, I have yes, I have a sore throat, but this will help. So yeah, I don't think that we can put too much pressure. At the same time, if the parents are not musicians, I've seen this, they think they know everything. And they assume that our profession works the same as another profession, or because they are not musicians, they don't understand what kind of pressure you can be under. And if they push too much, then the kids are going to be not so well adjusted socially, and they're not going to have a happy life. And to me as a parent, yes, I want my daughter to be successful. I want her to have the best life she can have. But most of all, I want her to be happy.
I think this is especially important because unless we are teaching artists or college level, parents are often very involved. And that relationship could really impact on the students' growth and development. So how important is the relationship between teachers and parents in the students' growth?
Well, again, I have limited experience because I mostly teach college students. I all my life mostly taught college students. Occasionally, I have had younger students, and a few times I had a good experience with the parents. They were involved, but in a very discreet way. It is more like my style. I was involved with my daughter only to the extent that I was there if she needed me, but I even never really went to talk to her teacher or to push for something. But I've also experienced, one, the type of parent who thinks they should also tell you what repertoire you should choose for the student. And I cut off any ties. Then when we got to that point, I said, I'm sorry, I can no longer teach your child. Even though sometimes it was a pity because the child was really talented. And then there is also the other cases, like I'm experiencing, that parents don't understand that a child needs a mentor, a primary mentor. You cannot parade this child and have them take lessons from 20 or 30 people, because it's going to be very confusing. Even if the child is super gifted, but it's going to be, basically it's going to undo everything that I'm trying to do. And then I have to undo what other people did and try to redo it. So my patience tends to wear very thin when it's like that. And I endure it for as long as possible, and then I have to cut ties again, because it's just not possible.
I totally do agree with that. And is there something that you would wish that music students would do more of in their development these days?
Yeah, these days I wish that, I'm lucky that some of my students, they did or do a lot of what I'm about to say, but most students don't know the first thing about the composers they're playing. And the most students don't know any other music by that composer. Like if they have to play a Beethoven sonata, they have no idea about the string quartets or the symphonies or the overtures or nothing. If they're playing Mozart, they don't know the operas. If they're playing Schubert, they don't know the songs or the lieder, and so on. And this is really a problem. And then also, when another thing that I regret students nowadays do is they are blinded by success to the point that they take as their role models, people who maybe just won a competition and honestly don't even play that well. And they don't take as role models all of the timeless giants, masters that we have so many recordings of, that you could still learn so much from.
I mean, I know usually students, if they have a will to learn, so they will do their best, and they will do everything in good faith. But what in playing, especially by young student, you don't accept?
What I don't accept in their playing, you said? No, I mean, I try to be open-minded and to not quash or stifle some views that they could have that are different than mine. But at the same time, there are some parameters. And, some people, again, because they have the wrong role models, they start doing absurd things, completely altering what the composers wrote. And at that point, I don't accept that. I think you should know what the composer wanted. Then you can filter it through your own sensibility. But you have to make a synthesis. You don't ignore completely or go opposite what the composer wrote.
I love this sentiment. And I would like to add something to what you just said. My favorite things to tell my students is learning music is not about being a musician. It's just about being the most rounded, best person that I can't be. Because, you prepare, you practice, you commit fully, and then you release the outcome. And that balance is really similar to life itself,
Absolutely, absolutely.
And music teaches us to be humble, a good listener, and build EQ skills needed for collaborations. But I don't want to sound too harsh, but if you approach it casually, the effort it takes will eventually overwhelm you. And if you're not truly committed to what you are doing, then why study music at all?
Right. There is also, as everything, I mean, it's all about balance, because there's also the other face of the coin. And that is, some students, like some musicians in general, they are so committed to only the literal version of the text that they don't go beyond the notes. So it is really difficult to go beyond the notes, understanding the meaning or making your own meaning of those notes, but respecting the composer at the same time. It is not simple to do both. Some people either ignore what the composer wrote and don't care to know and just actually gleefully do exactly the opposite, or some people just do what's written on the page and then the music doesn't come to life. So the difficulty is to find the balance and do both things.
And what would you say to young musicians who are just starting their careers? I don't want to say careers, but yeah.
Just starting their life as musicians after finishing studying? Well, I mean, every situation of every individual is different, but I think the important thing is at the very beginning of a career, after you've studied, most people will have to be expecting some rejections, some disappointment. So just don't let anything discourage you, because, with time, if you have something to say and if you are sincere and if you are hardworking, you will find a way to live your life as a musician in whatever capacity, and it will be fulfilling that way.
Plus, unfortunately, many of them enjoy it and they are very successful, but not sort of just relying on usually a certain raw talent, but not actually thinking about music, because they are too busy thinking about publicity and how to make a successful career, which shouldn't be the primary goal. And,
absolutely.
I mean, it's great to have a successful career, but if the career becomes more important than the music, then your soul becomes empty. And
that's what I was saying before. So it's you do it because the music comes first. And then if you are the best musician you can be, then the rest comes as a consequence of that.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't make much difference from career success, but it makes a lot of difference for what this really means. And you have to get to know it, but you also have to have a reference that the composer is more important than you. That's really what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely.
What would you like to say to music lovers who may not be professional musicians?
Oh, well, to music lovers who are not professional musicians, the only thing I can say is, thank God you exist. Because without you, we wouldn't have anybody to play for.
Mm-hmm.
I just think every human being should be a music lover because music is the best thing. And it is also our job to try to involve as many people and convince those who don't know they are music lovers. I think every human being can be a music lover. There are those who already know it and those who still don't know it. So our job is to reach out to those who don't know it. And they shouldn't feel intimidated by music because they don't have the technical knowledge. Music is just universal. So if you go and you try to just listen with open mind and open heart, and you let it take you, it eventually, sometimes very quickly, sometimes just eventually take you over, and what it can transmit you, what it can give you, will make you much, much richer than any 2-minute little pop song that maybe makes a billion views or downloads, and you forgot it 2 minutes after you listened to it. There is no comparison. I know I am biased, but all of these pop songs, they only have success because our society, attention span became very short, and the cultural level went down because public education is not as good as it used to be, and culture maybe feels intimidating, and it costs money to go to concerts, and not everybody can afford it, and so on. But it should be, we should try to help spread it around as much as possible.
I truly agree with that. If you could speak to your 20-year-old self, what would you say?
My 20-year-old self, I would say, don't worry too much. I used to worry a lot. Because I was dealing with a society at the time in Italy where there was a lot of corruption, and in order to be recognized or to have a career, to have performances, to have a job, if you didn't have connections, or if you didn't do anything that was ethically questionable, then you might not get the opportunity. And so I was worrying a lot. I was worrying, okay, I have to be able to make a living, but I don't want to do anything else other than music. So it should be based on merit. And I know I am working hard and I have the means to be able to succeed. But I was seeing, honestly, other people who didn't have the means, and they were succeeding because of these connections or other reasons. And so this was discouraging. Mm-hmm. But what I didn't know at the time, and of course I know now, is that if you persevere, your opportunity will come one way or another. You just have to be open to it, and when it comes, you have to seize it. And then you can be happy because you have fulfilled your aspirations, and you did it the right way. You didn't do it by cheating or by getting over people who were ahead of you by taking shortcuts or with nepotism or with money, or you know what I mean? So I think it's quite nice to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I've done it the honest way. And whether I have a big career or a medium career or a small career or whatever it may be, it is mine. and I don't owe it to anybody else other than myself. Of course, in appreciation for all the teachers who helped you along the way. But I mean, the professional side of it, I built myself.
That's wonderful. And that's looking back. What piece of advice has stayed with you the most valuable throughout your life?
This is a little bit harder, but I would have to say, just because I used to worry so much, my teacher, Ana Maria Penella, once told me, and then she told me several times after that, it was an Italian saying, but I will translate it into English. It amounts to, don't put Band-Aid or a bandage around your head if you haven't broken it yet. Because I was so worried about things that had even not happened yet.
I love this sentiment. And, I actually, through everything we have discussed it on like teaching, petitions, and beyond. And, one essential point keeps returning. You must always remain your own voice,
Yes, absolutely. You don't lose your own individuality.
Yeah, and it's a bit like acting from my perspective. And actors may play many different roles, becoming entirely different characters. But in the end, it's still their body, their face, their voice, and the role may change, but the person remains. And the same is true for musicians. So no matter what repertoire you play, you bring yourself into it.
That's exactly right. I even often use this metaphor about acting. And I often also tell students that playing is like acting, because when you are on stage, no matter if you whisper or shout, everybody must be able to hear you. So you have to project and you have to articulate and you have to have good timing. And the silences are as important as the notes. Or for actors, the silences are as important as the words. And when you are maybe the happiest person ever, maybe you just fell in love, but then you have to go and play the Funeral March Sonata. So you have to get into the character. Or you are very sad, but you have to play the most cheerful piece ever. You have to get into character. You have to remain yourself, but get into character. Exactly like you said.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also often tell my students, you have to enjoy your life and don't just stay home and practice. And because life shapes our musical vocabulary, our expressions, so if we haven't lived something, we can't truly express it. And life experience is essential to not only for becoming an artist, but for becoming a human being. And you never really arrive at the point where you can't say, I am the best. But if you did, I think that would be a tragedy, because growth will stop. So you have to trust what is unique about you and learn how to grow from it. And let's think about it. And why do audiences return again and again to hear different pianists play the same repertoire? Of course, the music itself is great, but even more importantly, I suspect what they are really curious about is what will you bring to it? So they come to hear your perspective, your stamp, your voice, and because you offer something no one else can.
That's absolutely right. And every time we interpret a piece, we are telling a story through those notes, but the story may be slightly different or very different because it's filtered through our own sensibility. But I think that what makes really the difference is every artist has a way of, at a certain level, where the level is high, different artists can show a piece from a different perspective, so that if the audience hears the beautiful Beethoven 109 sonata, for example, 4, 5, 6 times in the span of a couple of years in concert, one artist will show something, another will show something else, and they will come away with so many different perspectives on the same work, all valid, and it's really enriching. They will know that work in a much more complete way.
Yes, absolutely. No matter how advanced technology becomes, the essence of music education still lies in the connections between people.
It's the same as the concerts. Nothing can replace a live performance.